I'm going to be talking about how do we teach coping skills, like things in the moment that we can help our clients with. This shared. You all are still seeing the big screen, right?
Yeah, it looks good. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is a talk about things that patients can use in the moment, kind of immediately, to help them address cravings, urges, and other emotions or things that they just like can't deal with right now, and some strategies around that. And this is a subset of a training that one of my doctoral students actually teaches to first responders, that they're able to either use themselves or they're able to teach to people that they're responding to, that are in crisis, sometimes a substance use related crisis, on the street. So she's done this with I think over 100 of the officers in one of the counties around here. We have no disclosures, either myself or Alia. Great. So this is something I get asked many times. I talked to the fellows even a week or two ago, and this is this sort of question of like, you mental health people always tell me like, teach people coping skills, do coping skills, but what are some coping skills? Like, is it all just like deep breathing and go do yoga and like look at the sunset? And there's limitless, infinite coping skills. People are always coming up with new ones that we're kind of putting under this umbrella. And it's about being able to kind of recognize that there's things that are going to still happen to everybody, all of us, day in and day out, that require us to deal. And the medications, even if you're super, super compliant with your medication is not going to help. This is not something that you don't get like in this like protective little bubble, just because you're really being really good compliance with your medication. So when providers ask me like what other stuff can I do, I'm like excited, because I'm like, yeah, there's like a lot of like really good insights that you're having here. And this is like that the patients need more than just medication. They need more than just social support, more than just comprehensive psychotherapy, maybe even more than a geographic cure. They need something more. There's this need to be able to address something immediately in the moment when you have a strong emotion, when you have an urge, when you have a panic attack. And our medications don't address this. And many times when clients are on substance use treatment, they're like, the coping skill that has been the coping skill to rule all coping skills has been used substances. So we're taking away that really big coping skill that has kind of become the blanket one. And many people have maybe forgotten what their kind of coping skills they used to use were. So if we take away that coping skill of substance use and we don't replace it with anything, our clients are going to have a hard time. So we're going to talk about just some quick ones today. This could be, I could teach an entire 3-credit course on this, but we're just going to talk about some ones that hopefully you can put in your toolbox and use from now on. I've split this up. The organization is between more cognitive type skills and more behavioral type skills. And this is kind of an arbitrary distinction. But if you think about a patient maybe you've seen recently, so one I have on my caseload right now, he's struggling. He's had a recent return to use after a pretty long period of abstinence. And what's gotten him every time is he gets these really socially anxious thoughts, like thoughts that no one likes him. He's going to die alone. He can't do anything right. And he kind of like ends up in this spiral of basically like social anxiety. And the only way he can get out, he feels, is to be able to use. So for him, being able to address those thoughts with a specific coping skill is super important. But then I also have clients that they can't articulate a single thought they've had all day. I get like a version of, yeah, everything was totally fine. And then like, I had an awesome day. Everything was going so well. And then like, I looked down and I had a drink in my hand. And so for those clients, addressing thoughts is going to be a really long, slow process. It's going to take a lot of hours in therapy because we have to slow down and even figure out what the thoughts are and what the emotions are, et cetera, et cetera. So for that type of client, what I need to do is address the behavior of don't pick up the drink. So I have some coping skills for that as well. Right. So what is the goal with coping skills? And the idea here isn't that we're necessarily trying to fix anything. What we're trying to do is keep things from getting worse. We're putting a time space into the sequence of events so that there's more time to maybe do something else. So your client or patient, you're using these to distract, to avoid, to give themselves more time to make those decisions that are more in line with their goals, more in line with their values, more in line with their recovery. These skills don't really fix anything. This idea, we always are telling people, right? Like emotions are good. Like, deal with your emotions. We want to focus on emotions. Like, I'm a therapist, right? Like, emotions are very, very important to my ability to have a career. But sometimes, like, if you are screaming, like you're about to scream at your kids, you can't deal with the emotion, right? Like, you can't feel the emotion. You might be really upset and really frustrated, but you can't scream. So you just got to figure out a way to just like stop that and then feel the emotion later in the bathroom with the door closed. That is some of that's some of the idea with coping skills, is we're keeping it from getting worse. The hope is that by teaching patients coping skills, it is a way to build resiliency. And this idea that resiliency isn't a state or a trait, but it's this process of learning ways to adapt to situations at hand, and recognizing that we need different coping skills. It's not going to be the same as it ever was before, now that we've had this period of substance use in our life history. And we can use these coping skills to better reestablish balance in our lives. And there's a bit of a surrender here in recognizing that you can't fix everything. There's gonna keep being things that we don't like and feelings we don't like that will come at us. But we can take agency to keep things from getting worse for a little bit of time. And if we can keep things, like if you're slipping down the mountain of worse, if you can stop slipping, you're still falling, but you're not slipping anymore. There's some ability to recover there. We're better off than we were. Okay. So what are the strategies? Okay, so one big cognitive strategy we have is this idea of cognitive restructuring. And what we're doing here is this idea that we can't change a situation. We can only change how we think about it. So literally changing how we're thinking is the cognitive restructuring part. And what this technique assists us in is replacing any stress-producing thought, any craving-related thoughts, with something that is more balanced, that does not produce stress, does not lead to that craving. So my client that has the thought of, I can't do anything right, nobody will like me, I will die alone, thinking, okay, this isn't very helpful for me. These are the thoughts that I have that make me return to use. What can I think instead? I can remind myself, oh, my classmate, they're relying on me to get my project done. They're counting on me. They think I'm good at this. Like, we're not fixing anything at all, right? We're taking this really big overall situation and putting it on something more immediate, tangible, that doesn't trigger urges to use. So you will hear these thoughts come up with your clients, your patients sometimes, right? Like, I can't do anything right. So that's the thought we could cognitive restructure, right? So when if that's the thought that really sets you off into the spiral, what can you think instead? What would be a more helpful thought? And walk them through it. What could you say? Oh, I'm good at taking care of my child. Finding those good things and pairing them. We practice this. You practice this in the lower stress situations so that when these thoughts come up in the higher stress situations, you have an automatic reply. You can answer yourself in your own mind with something that is more helpful to you, more in line with your values, more in line with who you're trying to become. I think that, other ones I think of as like like, when things are like this, I always return to use. I always relapse. Something as simple as this time I'm working really hard and it might be different. Something like that can give you a bit more agency, make you feel like you're less in this overall spiral. So you can prompt clients to walking through these different beliefs. There's some kind of overall types of cognitive beliefs that can be more can repeat more and more often. This idea of the Monday morning quarterbacking, like this idea of like, this thing happened in the past and I should have known better. I could have done this differently. And now I like need to punish myself for it now because I didn't know something. Like I didn't know. It's very, the Monday morning quarterbacking, I guess, basically being like, it's very easy to critique a football quarterback on Monday after you know the outcome of the game. But he is standing there on the field with 300-pound dudes trying to knock him down and hurt him. So like when you're in that initial situation, it's very different than you sitting now in the therapy office talking to me. And you need to give yourself some grace and some forgiveness about what decision you did or didn't make when the 300-pound dude was running at you and trying to take away the ball. And then changing our definition of success. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect all the time. What's good enough for today? What keeps us as healthy as possible for today? What can we do with the resources that we have at hand? Not everything will be fixed overnight. So we have some specific worksheets, and you can just Google for these. There's all different ones that are around. This is one from Cognitive Processing Therapy, which is a VA based manual, this is all public domain because it was made by the government. Your tax dollars at work. So this idea of being able to look at events and how those connect to our thoughts, our emotions, and then being able to come up with a dispute for those emotions and those beliefs, and see how having that dispute take place, if that will change how you feel. So you can work with clients through this in a more, if you have a longer amount of time with them, which most of you will not have. Another cognitive skill is this idea of urge surfing, which you've maybe heard talked about before. And this is really about the idea of kind of harkening back to with clients that you will not feel like this forever. Anything you feel now, as horrible and terrible as it is, it will not last. Cravings for use, extreme withdrawal symptoms, panic attacks. Panic attacks last 10 minutes on average. It's a terrible, awful 10 minutes where you're pretty sure you're going to die, but it ends and you do not die. So this urge surfing is really kind of leaning in to recognizing those feelings, where you feel the feelings that you're feeling, where that craving is in your body. Do you notice your heart racing? Do you notice your skin feeling cold and tingly? Does your stomach feel sick? Really, instead of focusing on the drive to go and get whatever the thing that will help you avert the craving, really focusing on, I can withhold, I can sit through this for a long enough time that this urge will go away. And picturing and visualizing a wave on a beach is the idea with urge surfing. So the idea that the urge will start to creep up on you, and then it will peak. And then eventually the wave does come down and crest, and then disappear. So if you can observe how you're feeling and picture that wave and picture yourself getting to that top, and then things going away. And the great thing about urge surfing is that the more you practice this, the faster you're able to kind of get that visualization and get the control over the urge. So if the first time you try to urge surf a craving, it takes you 20 minutes and you're absolutely miserable. The next time it might only take you 19 and a half. And the next time it might only take 12. And you build the self-efficacy that you can do this. that you break that cycle of before in your use history, every time you had an urge, you went and found the substance of choice. Now you can take the control and do something different. All right, so those are my cognitive ones, my cognitive split. This is, I guess, so again, this is happening in your brain. I think of this a bit more behaviorally, though, because it's a more active type thing that you can do, and it doesn't necessarily require any recognition of what's happening in your mind. And there's numerous techniques that kind of fall under this, like grounding versus mindfulness. And mindfulness is really about paying attention to your thoughts and kind of just noticing what's happening in your brain. And for a lot of persons I've worked with, particularly in early recovery, like they're very afraid of kind of what's the stuff that's in their brain right now. Like the stuff that's being said in there is really scary and not very nice. So like telling people to like, let's do mindfulness or let's do meditation, they're like, that is scary. Like I want no part of that. So I usually err a bit more for these grounding type strategies where you very like intentionally do stuff instead of having to like introspect too much. And then, you know, we can build towards the more recognizing our thoughts and dealing with that later. But this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding technique is you have the person, they literally are going to intentionally do these things. So 5 things that you can see. So you whatever you're feeling, you stop yourself, you slow down, and you look with your eyes, like, okay, I see my phone, I see this book on my desk, I see the computer, I see a car outside my window. You very intentionally look, and then you do the same things. You try to hear 4 different things, use your senses, touch 3 different things. So having textures, all those like fidget spinners people put on their phones, like those type of grounding things. So having yourself feel here now in this room and moving away from whatever the feeling that you're not wanting to feel right now is. Same thing with smell, and then finally with taste. And you can, carry gum, carry mints, but it could be as simple as, if you I've told people, like, lick the salt on the back of your hand and really focus in on that, like go for it. It doesn't have to be cute. It doesn't have to be pretty. We're trying to keep ourselves in line with our goals. And this will pass. Another one that kind of falls in the same technique of grounding is this idea of categories. And this one I kind of think in my brain almost as like more like pure distraction. And this is whatever you're feeling in the moment, we're going to try to just distract from that. So animals, think about all the animals you can think of. Put them in alphabetical order if you have to, if you really need to like zero in and get closer and more focused. And you can keep going through the different categories. And I have clients like take a picture of this on their phone. I have people, you can put this as the background on your phone, so that when you're having, the categories to zoom into and go through it. And if you're with friends, like say, hey, I'm not having a great moment right now. Can you talk to me? Like, let's do famous people. Think of all the famous people you can think of right now. Like, I'll do one, you do one. Like you can bring in collaterals and bring in help. And again, we're trying to zoom in, give ourselves time to do something different. So someone has, been reminded of a trauma trigger or something like that. You went to the grocery store and you thought you saw someone that reminded you of your abuser, and you are, you've left and you've gone to the car, but you feel too shook to drive home. Sit there, name all the animals until you're, feel ready to call a friend and then feel ready to drive home. We're trying to keep things from getting worse, not having the panic attack in the grocery store. And then this final 4 set, these are tip skills, and these are from dialectical behavioral therapy. And these are some of my favorites. So change the temperature of your body. So this is based off of the idea of the dive reflex. So it doesn't work as well when I'm in the South, but when you've grown up north, there's always these stories about people who have fallen through the ice of like ponds, that the ice was too thin and they were like out there trying to fish or ice skate or something like that. And the way this story always goes in the news report is the people fall through and there's this moment of panic, but suddenly everything slows down and they get very calm and they realize there's a branch that they can grab, or they can freeze their mittens to the ice and they can start to pull themselves off. There's always this idea of like panic and then everything slows down and I get strangely calm. And there's this autonomic response when your body gets this like kind of like flash cold, particularly if it's around this area of your face, that is almost like a reset button. So being able to, if people are having very, very strong emotions, being able to jump in a cold shower, hold ice cubes under their eyes, splash their face with water. I had clients that dunk their heads in ice water, that is what they need. I've had clients that keep an ice pack in their like refrigerator at work that they can do this with. And this can immediately change your heart rate and make you feel more relaxed. A bit more of a time investment is this idea of intense exercise, but again, you're feeling strong emotions and like almost like lean into it. Like, okay, like you're feeling angry, you're feeling stressed, you're feeling like you really would like to go buy some heroin. Work out as hard as you can. And like this is intense exercise. This is like I can't talk while I'm exercising. Exercise. And this changes homeostasis in the body, a bit of an endorphin rush, and it can change how you're feeling. And again, it gives you a bit of time between the urge and the behavior. Paced breathing. This is kind of this is the deep breathing. There's a couple different ways to do deep breathing. This is like a box breathing. So this is just breathing in for 4, holding for 4, and exhaling for 4. And the focus is, again, you're still trying to focus on filling your belly as much as possible, your stomach. The more people practice paced breathing, the better they're almost able to like condition themselves to, as soon as they start doing that, they start feeling calmed down. So practice the deep breathing when you're calm at night to fall asleep, and then it's going to be there for you when you are stressed and worried. And then the last one is muscle relaxation, paired muscle relaxation, progressive muscle relaxation. And here you are, the person is tightening different muscle groups. So, you can start with your head and, tighten the muscles of your forehead, tighten the muscles of your eyes. You can start with your hands and you kind of move sequentially through every muscle group. If you look on YouTube, there's a ton of videos of different people with different accents walking you through this progressive muscle relaxation. This is really good for people who have that, like before they're falling asleep, like all of the horrors of the life and the world and everything bad that they've done, like crushes down on them and they find themselves unable to sleep. Working through these progressive muscle relaxations, instead really focusing on the words of what the YouTube person's voice is saying and focusing on how your body feels as it tightens and relaxes, is a really helpful replacement instead of reviewing everything you've ever done wrong in your life. And it can often be enough to help them fall asleep. All right. So how do you teach this? How do you do this, right? So I'm a psychologist, so I have 45 minutes to talk to clients. You have 7-minute double book sessions. In addiction medicine, sometimes or psychiatry. So the easiest way to avoid cravings, urges, emotions you don't want to feel is to avoid them. So that's the kind of the old people, places, things, relapse prevention, even AA type model. But being able to talk to clients, talk to patients, and normalize that even if you're 100% compliant with your buprenorphine program, even if you're doing everything we are telling you to do in therapy, you still might have some urges, you still might have some cravings, you still might get mad at your kids, you still might have trouble sleeping. Like some of this is going to happen to you. And if you've been kind of just like in the void of substance use for so long, and that's the only kind of the only all of the feelings have been coming up or off the substances, getting habituated to the kind of ness of everyday life can be shocking. So normalizing that, like you're not going to do everything perfect. None of us do. And having this doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. Having an urge doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. Having cravings doesn't mean this program isn't working for you. It just means you have to do a coping skill in the moment to try to get through. And then it might be better on the other side. You might find that you're really having to use so many coping skills. Maybe we do need to adjust something, but don't just think that you failed because you've had some breakthrough symptomology. And listening to what those thoughts are, asking what led to the most recent return to use, focusing on those thoughts, suggesting alternative options for thoughts. And even if you have like handouts for tip skills or coping skills, encouraging people to Google them, go to a group where they might learn some, normalizing that we all need to be doing this, particularly when we're learning and trying hard new things like getting engaged in treatment. So it wasn't super researchy, so there's not that many references, but that's the Linehan dialectical behavioral therapy where the tip skills come from, and this is my student's dissertation.